Hello and welcome to the A Quilting Life podcast. I'm Sherri McConnell from A Quilting Life, and I'm here today in my sewing studio because we have a special guest for you today. Before I want to mention that you can still sign up for my Quilting Life Academy. It's a 6-week online course, completely inclusive, meant for beginner to intermediate quilters and even beyond. All the lessons are recorded so that you can go back and watch them again and again and progress at your own leisure. There will also be a live portion to the course, and we'll be making a sampler quilt. There are also lots of small project patterns that you can use to practice the new skills that you learn, and the course will be beginning on January 12th, 2025, so you can find all the details for that in the description below as well. Okay, and I'm super excited about today's interview. I've actually just finished talking with her. We're recording our little intro right after my conversation, but I'm excited to announce that Janet Clare is going to be here with us today on the podcast. We had such a delightful conversation. I know you're going to love it. It is just 2 days before Christmas, and you've got to stay on and listen to the end of the podcast because hear about what Janet's doing to get ready for Christmas on the day that we tape this. We know I found it very inspiring. I have some new ideas that I got from Janet, and even though I've known her for nearly 10 years, you learn more every time you talk to somebody. She's a creative soul and such a sweet person, and really hope that you'll love this interview. We're going to jump right into it now. Okay, so I'm super excited to be here online with my friend Janet Clare. I guess I've known you since our first quilt market in Minneapolis, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm guessing that is, I feel like I had been to your schoolhouses before that, before Chelsea and I were designing fabric, but I feel like that's the first time we really got to chat and visit.
I think that's the first time. Yes, it would be.
Yes,
And so when was Minneapolis?
2015. Yes, for sure, 2015.
2015. Well, there you go. It's nearly 10 years.
Yes, I can't believe it. And I just remember, before we get started, I have to, I remember that you shared with me and Chelsea where to find the little cookies.
The Moda cookies.
The Moda cookies, yes. And
in really pretty tins.
in
Like
the pretty tins.
Gingery ones.
Yes.
Sorry
Yes.
about that.
Nobody had told us where those were, and you told us, and I've known ever since. So
I told you something really sort of classy and useful, but know where to find the cookies.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we love hearing all things from the UK from you every quilt market too. We always love hearing the updates. Yes. But we're just going to get started. I'm going to let you introduce yourselves. I'm sure all of our viewers and listeners already know who you are, but give them an introduction, and then we would just love for you to share with us your quilting life, how you got started in all of this.
Okay. Well, my name is Janet Clare, and I have been designing for Moda for 12 years. They said yes in August 2012. And prior to that, I had a little business where I was designing quilt patterns and writing books and sort of teaching and things. But Moda was a really big step up, and it was on my sort of dream list for a long, long time. And now I've got, I don't work at home anymore. I've got a studio, and my husband runs the business. And so it's really grown, and Moda has sort of been pivotal in that sort of growth of the business. It's such a joy, and we get to hang out once a year, and it's just lovely, isn't it? It's just lovely.
Yes, it is. How far away do you have to drive to get to your studio?
Oh, no, I can walk.
Oh, you can
It's about
walk.
a 5-minute walk from home at the most.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
It's everything's walkable here. So we live in town, and everything is literally walkable. So I can walk to the supermarket, I walk to school, I can walk to the library, I can walk to the cinema. And when I say walk, within
Oh,
about 10 minutes, so
wow.
really, really walkable. That's
That
what
would be wonderful.
different when we're in the States, because everything is so big that
Right.
people just don't walk. I mean, it's not practical a lot of the time, but yeah, everything's really walkable where we are.
Okay.
We live new to town, so the fastest train into London would be about 38 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So I go in as often as I can. And of course, London is just amazing. It's so inspiring to have on our doorstep. So we go in as often as I can and go and see the museums. Did you know all of our museums are free in London?
I didn't.
No, they're all free. So you can just sort of pop in and spend an hour or 5 minutes or something. So yeah, it's a really amazing resource to have on our doorstep.
Oh, how wonderful. It was my grandmother's dream to go to London, and she finally did when she was in her 70s. Yeah, she went with a cousin, and they went on a tour, and they did everything, and it was probably just the highlight of her life to
Oh,
go.
so good.
Yes.
So good. Yeah,
Yeah,
lovely. And of course, we're so close to Europe as well.
right.
I work with a travel company, and they do these organized stitching holidays. So we
Oh,
sew and we go and look at the textiles in the country and in that region and everything. So I've just been to Switzerland with them, and we were
oh,
sewing in the Bernina Creative Centre in Switzerland. And,
wow.
we're talking an hour and a half, 2-hour flight. We're really lucky. Lots of Europe is very, very close by. So we're
Right.
very spoilt where we
Yes, very.
live.
Okay, so how did this all start for you then? Did you sew as a child or did
My mum's a quilter,
okay.
and my dad paints and draws. So all of his siblings are
Oh,
sort of graphic designers and architects and very, very artistic. And my mum's side of the family are real sort of crochet, knitting, make do and mending, dressmaking, going to turn their hands to lots of things. So I was always encouraged to, you know, be creative when we were younger. And I went to art school, and I was a
oh,
knitwear designer. I trained to be a knitwear designer, first of all. So I worked with an
oh,
agency in London, and I designed knitwear, had my own little label for a few years. And
oh,
yeah, and then we had the children, and I've got 2 boys. They're not boys, they're 23 and 20. But knitting was work, and my sort of quilting and my sewing was a hobby. So I sort of flipped it around. So I
right.
spent more time with my sewing. And of course, then you've got a house, and you want to make things for the house and making things for the children. And so I just become completely obsessed with patchwork and quilting. And I started writing little patterns and selling them in my Etsy shop, just really to fund buying more fabric. That's my main aim. And then I started doing a bit of teaching, and then I wrote a book, and then it kind of just snowballed. And as I say, I keep this little wish list in my purse, things that I'd really like to do. And over the years, I've managed to tick a lot of them off, and one of them was design fabric. So I went through my fabric stash, which took me quite a while. And I looked at all the selvages and looked at whose fabric I was buying the most. And I was buying Moda's fabric, and I was buying from a company called Lessien, and they're in Japan. And
Right.
then I wrote this long list of fabric companies, put Moda at the top and Lessien next, and then this great big long list. And I thought, what I will do is I will send them some of my ideas. And when the first one says no, I'll send them to the second one. When they say no,
Right.
I'll just do it all the way back. And then when I get down to the whole list, I should know or have enough feedback as to what I need to learn or what I need to improve. And Moda said yes, which was
Wow.
insane. It's just mad. So I sent them original paintings. I sent them original drawings. I didn't put anything into repeat. I just tried to show that I had lots of ideas and potential, and literally couldn't believe it when they said yes.
Wow. Did you do that in person or over email, or
I literally sent them a parcel.
you sent them a
I
package?
sent them a package from my
Wow.
house to head office in Texas.
Wow.
I didn't hear anything for weeks. And, in your imagination, you're thinking, oh, they've just laughed. They've just thought, who does she think she is? Throw that away. She hasn't got a clue. She can't draw, blah, blah, blah. And then Tony, my husband, said, you've got to phone them. You've got to phone them and get some feedback and see what happened. So I very, very brave. And Texas is 6 hours behind. And the boys were at school for 6 hours a day. And I had to find this window where Texas might be in their office and I didn't have a boy in the house, because I thought, I cannot make this phone call with a boy in the house.
Right.
So I phoned, and Cheryl answered her own phone, which I couldn't believe either. I thought I might have to get through, PAs and things. So Cheryl answered the phone, and she said that she'd received my parcel and would have a closer look at it. And then a couple of days later, she said, yes, we'll just take it. Don't worry about putting things in repeat. Don't worry about digital files. We'll just take your drawings. And that's how it works now.
Wow.
Literally paint
Yes.
for weeks and weeks, and do sketchbook and hand it and mix my paint colors in little jam jars.
Oh.
Now, so honestly, it's been such a blessing. I just couldn't believe it that they said yes.
Wow. I guess I didn't realize that you painted everything. I knew that Deb Strain did that, and I knew that Kathy Schmitz drew, but I didn't know that you did that. That is so...
Absolutely everything. And keep a sketchbook. And I turn my sketchbooks in as well. They send my sketchbook to Pixie in Japan.
Okay.
So she has my sketchbook, so she can see like the whole story, the whole thinking, the whole process behind things.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. And so then they figure out the repeats in the fabric and...
Yeah. So I give an idea, so I would know whether it was obviously a stripe or a little ditzy or an all over or something I wanted to be sort of a bigger scale. I would give them an idea.
Right.
They really handle the nuts and bolts of getting it into print. Yeah.
Wow. That's so wonderful. I bet you were so happy that Tony encouraged you to call. So
I know, but that's such a business sort of way of doing things. Like, why wouldn't you follow up? And me, as you're just thinking, oh, I'm just a mum who likes painting. You are more immediately think, well, I did, that they'd rejected me. But his was like, well, you've got to follow up. Like, nothing's happened. You don't know. So you just got to follow up.
So how do you keep it all organized? I remember when I mentioned about this, you emailed me back and you said, I've got it in my diary. So
I've got it in my diary.
I'm guessing, that's like a planner. That's we have these little language differences.
Yes.
But
I do keep a planner, a journal, and I write in every day. Have you heard of the bullet journals?
Yes.
So it's sort of my own, can't be bothered to do it all exactly.
Right.
But I do keep a journal, and I draw in it and doodle in it and keep my lists in it. And then my phone adds things to my calendar. But it also, we nearly missed our flight home from Quilt Market because I let my phone put the flight into my Apple calendar. And it did in UK time. So I thought we were flying home on Monday and we were flying home on Sunday. 6 hours. But anyway, Tony caught it. I'm not organised. I desperately try and be organised. And I'm just not. Until I snap. Like, I can live in a disaster zone, ignoring everything, be completely relaxed. And then one day I'll completely snap and everything has to be immaculate. And then it all just disintegrates again.
That's kind of how I am sometimes. I can have like this organized chaotic clutter, but then sometimes it just hits me and I just have to clean the entire
Yes.
mess.
Oh, that's
Yes.
you and me. That's all right then.
Yes.
Me.
Yeah, I totally get that.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. So when you wake up every day, do you have, a list like I'm going to do these 3 things today or do you just kind of decide if you're going to paint or sew or
I always think that I should draw every day and sew every day, but oftentimes it just doesn't really work out. I
Right.
think people would be surprised as a professional textile designer how little we actually sew. Is that just me? Do you feel that as well? I
Oh,
feel
I
like
feel
we did
yeah.
more sewing and more experimenting when I didn't have the business side of things to do.
Right. Yeah. No, that's exactly how it is. I feel like I'm on my computer more than I'm in my sewing room.
Yes. Yes. But I have been designing this week because we've got obviously there's always fabric collections coming round, isn't there? So we've been designing
Right.
quilts and I've done some sewing and I just did some sewing this afternoon because I found 2 quilts without labels on them. And I'm
Oh.
always telling people to label their quilts. So I thought I've got half an hour, let's make some labels. And I do the writing on my sewing machine. I do.
Oh.
Moda have just shared it on their Instagram. We did a little
Okay.
market, didn't we? So yeah, I just write the quilt name and sign it basically, and then sew that to the back of the quilt. So it didn't take long.
Oh, okay.
But no,
I'm gonna have to watch that. So I need to be better at labeling. So I always feel like I need to hand embroider something and it just takes too
nice.
long.
But
Yeah.
also, I don't really live with my quilts anymore. Do you? I don't really use them like I used to because they're always like being photographed or shown
Right.
at talks and things. So the whole thing is it's like it's such a privilege to do this as your job, but it is still nonetheless very much a job.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know people don't understand why I have to keep quilts but not use them, and
Yeah.
it's because you never know when you're gonna need it for a lecture or
Hmm.
a trunk show or something like that, and so I
Yeah.
store them, you
Yeah.
know?
Do they look like work to you as well? Like, could you relax on the sofa under one of your work quilts? Because I don't.
Oh, well, I think I make enough that I can use that I have we have quilts that we use,
Yes.
so,
Yes.
uh,
So do we.
'cause yeah, and some of my patterns I've made updated versions of,
Mhm.
so then I can use the old one.
Yes, you can
Yeah.
use the old one. Yeah. I've just
Yes.
took the Christmas quilts home. Years and years ago, I did a Christmas line called Wintertide, and I
Uh-huh.
made 3 or 4 quilts, using that. So they've all gone home. I took them home yesterday. So they're all
Oh.
ready to go. When we all change our beds and we've got fresh sheets, we'll put the Christmas quilts on.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm in the midst of putting all the Christmas quilts out, so but I hang a lot of them on the wall and, on quilt ladders,
Mhm.
so I'm not technically using them on a bed, but I am
You
displaying them.
you can still see them. I
I
like this
can s
bit behind me. I changed the quilt that's hanging up behind me a lot, and I've got big banisters, as well. That's the staircase.
Oh.
But I've always got quilts draped over the banisters.
Oh, yeah. That's what I do too. So, well, do you have time then to sew things just for fun, or are you mostly doing your business sewing?
I mostly do the business sewing. We do live TV once a month. It's called Sewing Street. You can watch online, and they stream on their Facebook channel and everything.
Oh,
So I have a lot of demonstrations and a lot of samples to make for that. So I don't think I play as much as I would like to.
right,
It's just me. I mean, there's no one in control of my schedule, so I could do it. I guess there's just always other sewing to do. And I
right,
still really enjoy sewing. I still really enjoy it. But if I'm sat down at my sewing machine, I think, well, I may as well be moving that project along rather than
right,
playing.
right. Yeah, no, like this week I would love to just be sewing, but we have I need to get my quilt patterns designed for the next collection, and that's my goal this week. So I'm just going to be on the computer, and
Yeah, yeah.
you know how it is.
I do know how it is. I
Yes.
do indeed. And then we have quilt emergencies where we have to make like 3 quilts in 3 weeks. And then
Right.
all I do is sit at the sewing machine.
Yes.
Like come up with this thread monster just covered in threads and bits of
Yes.
fluff.
So that's a good question. You make all of your own samples then?
I have some people who help me. So my friend
Okay.
Pippa and my friend Carolyn, who's my long arm as well. I actually call
Okay.
her Elf. I have to
Oh.
think very carefully about calling her real name. Because I call her my little elf because she's like the little elves who help the shoemaker. Like she just wake up in the morning and it's done.
And
She's
it's done.
done it. She's just
Wow.
magically done it for me. She's not quite that fast. But anyway, so I call her Elf. So Pippa and Carolyn will help me, but I
Oh,
do try and make some of the quilts myself, definitely.
right.
I would prepare
Awesome.
all my demos and my step outs for, the teaching. And
Right.
I like making them, particularly if they're new and a technique that I haven't done before. I'd actually like making them because then you can actually write the pattern. Like Pippa's very good and very technical, and she does a bit of the technical editing for us, but it's her way of doing things, and it's
Right.
right, and she gets a beautiful result. But sometimes I think it should be my way of doing things. So I like
Right.
a combination.
Yes. Yeah. I understand that totally too because we have help with our pattern writing, and I always love it when I can make the quilt actually before we finish the pattern so
Yeah,
that I can put those insights
yeah.
in.
The insights in, and Tony does a lot of our pattern writing as well.
Oh.
He does the technical drawings and lays out
Oh.
the cutting and does the maths, the cutting charts. And he's always saying, "Why do you do that then?" And I said, "Oh, it's obvious." And he goes, "No, it's not obvious. It's not obvious why you did that then." And you think, well, you do that then because of it enables you to be da 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 down the line, or you can't. That would be a Y seam if I hadn't done that then, or whatever. So it's very
Right.
useful to have lots of insights, I think, because
Yes.
it is it's a responsibility. People have bought the fabric and they've bought your pattern, and it's got to come out right.
Right. I agree.
Yep.
So do you have a favorite notion?
I'm not really. I'm pretty low tech, as you can
Pretty
imagine.
low.
My paint
Uh-huh.
and my jam jars. I absolutely love my sewing machines. Like using starch. I've got some really nice long thin pins. And I tell you what I do love as well. There's an English scissor maker, they're like heritage brand called Ernest Wright, and they make
Oh,
the most beautiful scissors. And you can send them back and they'll repair them for you. So
oh,
I really like that. And they've been around for a couple of 100 years, and it's been in the family for most of that time. So I buy very little, but I try to buy nice, good quality.
right.
But I'm not one who has all these sort of twisty cutting mats and fancy rulers, and
Right.
great, but it's just not what I'm drawn to.
Wow, that's good to hear. What about your favorite quilt block? Do you have a
Um,
favorite?
I don't know. I'm quite into foundation piecing at the moment. I'm doing a bit of
Okay.
foundation piecing because I'm not very accurate sewer, and I love the accuracy that sewing on papers gives you. And you
Yes.
get really beautiful angles. But I think the best quilt block in the whole entire world is a half square triangle. There's so
I agree.
much you can do with a half square triangle.
Exactly.
Endless.
Yes, that is true. Are you drawn to more of a sampler? Because I noticed you have a sampler behind you.
Behind me. I do like a sampler. And I do a lot of applique as well. And I like doing projects that you would make something that's unique in the world. So I've got a quilt that I wrote about in my book called The Wordsmith, and it's a memory quilt, but it's not made out of like your kiddie T-shirts and things like that. It's actually inspired by a memory or a little family anecdote or a trip that you made. And I love teaching things like that. So I think when I'm teaching, I like to encourage people to make something that's completely unique to them.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
How often do you teach then?
We teach in the studio like 3 or 4 times a year at the very most. Sometimes it's twice, depending on what we're doing. We do the TV once a month, and that is, I do 2 hours of live TV, and the bulk of each of those hours is time for me to demonstrate and sew. So I teach online all the time, and
right.
then I teach for the quilt groups and things like that. So I actually do quite a lot of teaching. Quite a lot of my time is spent giving talks and teaching.
Awesome. Yeah. And do you travel all over Europe for that, or mostly in the?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I have taught in where have I taught? I've taught in Australia, but that's not Europe, I know. I have going to teach in Germany next year. And then with the travel company, I've taught in Prague and Madeira and Switzerland. Where else have I been? And I've taught in Cork, which is Southern Ireland. That's Europe. And I've taught in Wales, which is its own country. So yeah,
wow.
I do. Yeah, and I'm very lucky that I get to travel because I think that's really exciting. I love travel.
Yes, awesome. Do you have any tips to share with us?
Don't point out your mistakes.
Oh.
You must have done this when you go to all the quilt groups and they do show and tell. Have you seen them? And then the lady on the stage is going, oh, but I did that wrong and that went a bit wonky and I really wish I hadn't run out of that yellow or whatever. And you just think, don't point out your mistakes, and we all do it and they don't matter.
Right.
It's the only thing you can say about a quilt is that it's got matching points. You're completely missing the whole joy of having a quilt, aren't you?
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
When they come out, but that's not why I quilt. I don't quilt so that I've got matching points. I quilt to play with colour and patterns and yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I noticed you're wearing your apron.
I've always got my apron on.
Yes. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit about that?
Okay, so my apron came about because before I had the studio, I was working from home and I had this little room off the kitchen. It used to be part of the garage. I had this little room off the kitchen, and what was happening was that Tony had this big sort of corporate job, and he was really at the house 7 o'clock in the morning, not home till 7. And I had, the boys and the dog and the house, everything to do. That's fine, that's normal. But what I was finding was that I wouldn't start working on the business or designing or sewing until all the other jobs were done. But the trouble is, all the other jobs are actually infinite. They're literally infinite.
I know.
So only an idiot tries to finish an infinite job. So I was talking to my dad. My dad used to be a policeman. I was talking to him about how I was finding it hard to sort of give myself permission to get the house to a certain level. So I knew what was for dinner, but then I could just leave it and then get on with what I wanted to do, which felt very self-indulgent. And he was telling me about the power of having his police uniform, how it gave him authority, and people immediately had respect. And you sort of stand up a bit taller and you sort of embody that role. It's like a costume that you put on, like this power that you put on. So I got to thinking about how I could do that and translate. And the easiest uniform is an apron.
Right.
Easiest uniform. So I started just wearing like a cook's apron, but I didn't respect it because I just slung it in the washing machine and they didn't mind if I phoned the bank and walked the dog. It didn't matter what happened to this apron. So I thought, no, I need a really, really posh one. So I designed my crossover backed apron and bought really expensive linen. And I only put it on when I'm being creative, and I take it off as soon as I'm not creative. So I don't answer emails wearing my apron. I don't phone the bank wearing my apron.
Oh.
And and when I put it on, you're anchoring. And my sister is a clinical hypnotherapist, and that is an anchoring process. And it's just sort of taking a moment to sort of gather yourself and just be still, and then sort of step into what you've promised yourself you're going to do. And you can do that through prayer or meditation or lighting a candle. But if you I put my apron on, I just give myself, right, this is what you've promised yourself you're going to do. And now I'm ready to do it. And as soon as I stop doing that, I take it off.
I love that. I've never heard this and we always love coming up and seeing your apron at Quilt Market because you've added new little designs or pins. Yes, but I've never heard that whole explanation. I'm so glad.
Yeah, that's what it's about. I've got about 5. Some I paint. I don't paint in this one. Some I paint in, and some I have sort of just badges on, but I haven't embroidered into. But now this is really important. And the other thing, when I was wearing it when the boys were little, it was I actually inadvertently taught them to respect my time as well, because I would walk up to them holding my apron saying, so you don't need a drink and everyone's got a toy to play with and mummy's just going to go and do whatever for 10 minutes. And I put my apron on and they kind of knew that they'd have to wait. And of course, when they're little, you take your apron off and you deal with them. But over time, they really, really learned that mummy's got her apron on and she promised herself that that's what she was going to do. And they just learned to sort of, they used to play under the sewing machine and stuff, but they learned that that was my time. So I think it's about protecting your creativity, and actually, I think it works for anyone. If you've promised yourself you're sewing on Saturday evening, don't let that time get swamped by other things. And if you dress for the part and you set the intention, then you've got to fight with yourself to say, well, I promised myself.
Right.
I promised. I put my apron on and I promised myself I had time to do this.
Yes.
So that's what it's about.
Oh, I love it. This is so inspiring. I'm going to make an apron now.
You can make an apron. You do.
I need a pattern design apron and a sewing apron so that they're two different.
I met a lady and she had a Christmas efficiency apron, and she Christmas fabric, and she wore it on Christmas Day so that she knew. And I met another lady who was a science teacher, and she'd embroidered all the formula on her apron and wore it in class, but she had to remember not to wear it when she was giving them a test.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Yes. Well, is there anything else you've been thinking about that you might want to share with everybody?
I think so. Is there anything else you want to ask me? It's been such a joy talking to you.
It's been so much fun. Where can everyone most easily find you? Or wait, Billy, do you have a question?
Yeah. A question.
Yeah, real quick. I enjoyed what you were saying about the apron as well. Okay. But I do have a non-quilting question since we have you here and you're over in England. Do you have a favorite? Well, first of all, is your family and are you football fans? We call it soccer over here, but I know it's football over there.
Gosh, yeah.
Did I just open up a big can?
We're obsessed with Arsenal.
Okay, that was my next question. Who is your team?
Yes, Tony's got a season ticket. It's his pride and joy. It's the most expensive thing in the entire world, and he adores it. And they're always going. Yeah, so it's like it's not optional who they support. Yeah. It's not optional.
Okay. All right. I had to know I had you here. I love sports. I always sneak sports into our podcast one way or another. But this is the first time I've been able to talk about the EPL.
And they've been watching darts and they watch snooker.
Okay.
And they watch anything with a ball, anything with a scoring system. They will literally watch anything.
Okay. Well, awesome. So Arsenal fan. Okay. Now I have that in my memory.
Yes.
When I see you at Quilt Market next year,
don't talk to me about it, Billy. Just talk to me about something else. But Tony will be talking to you non-stop.
Okay. All right. When I see him next year, then I'll bring it up to him. Okay. All right. That's all from me. I enjoyed your guys' conversation.
Awesome. Well, where can everyone most easily find everything Janet Clare?
Okay, so my website is janetclare.co.uk. I'm on Instagram, and I have to use the E for Elizabeth, my middle name, on Instagram. So it's Janet E. Clare, because there's somebody else called Janet Clare on Instagram. She got there before me.
Oh.
I'm not unique. It's not a unique name. So I'm Janet E. Clare on Instagram, and yes, I'm easy to find. Hopefully, I've got a little Etsy shop and Moda. We've got our lovely little designer pages on Moda, haven't we? So
right,
easy to find.
I just could keep talking. I don't want to end the conversation, but
I'm going wreath making. It's tradition, so it's wreath making night round my friend Helen's. So we all make Christmas wreaths for our front doors, and one of her friends goes and gathers all the holly and the fir and all the decorations. She soaks all the oasis. And Helen cooks. We're making pudding. Hopefully Tony's gone home to make pudding. Is not pudding. You call something very specific pudding, don't you?
Yeah, but our pudding is kind of just like a thick, creamy.
Is it like a custardy thing?
Yes, similar to a custard.
Okay, so pudding is just general English for dessert.
Oh,
but dessert is quite fancy. You'd get a dessert in a restaurant.
Okay.
If you were being a bit posh, you'd have a dessert. We have puddings. So Tony's making pudding. Hopefully he's got that started. And then we're all walking round to Helen's to make our Christmas wreaths and have dinner and have pudding. And it's very sociable. So I can only talk to you for about another half an hour.
Oh, well, no, I know it's late in the day there, so I don't want to keep you. That sounds absolutely wonderful.
It's really nice.
I might just have to watch The Holiday tonight to try to get.
I'm having a girls' night. We invited all my friends round, and we're having a girly watch of The Holiday, and we're going to have snacks and a nice drink, and we're going to sit in front of it because we've got an open fire. We're going to sit in front of the fire, and we're going to watch The Holiday.
Oh, well, that makes me feel so good because that's my favorite Christmas movie of all. So
I love it.
I watch it every year.
And Cameron Diaz is, when Kate Winslet's cottage in the middle of nowhere, that's actually in Godalming, and that's about half an hour from me. And Cameron Diaz is driving up and down Godalming High Street. That's about where I live.
Wow, that's so awesome.
But it doesn't exist.
But it really does look like that where you live, like what we see there.
It doesn't usually snow. But all the little, when she's scared of the little narrow roads. That's true. That's true.
Yes. Oh, well, this has just been so wonderful, Janet. Thank you so much. Thank you. It just has been a delight. I'm inspired. So.
Well, you've got the whole day ahead of you now.
Yes.
You'll be doing your computer work, and you can see me making a Christmas wreath.
Yes.
Chatting away.
Yes.
Waiting for my pudding.
Yes. Well, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Bye-bye. Okay, that's it. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. I sure enjoyed it. I did not want it to end, for sure. Janet had to get going with the rest of her evening. But yes, learned so much. Hope you enjoyed it too. We are just 2 days away from Christmas, so I just want to wish a Merry Christmas to everyone out there who celebrates. And also just remind you that we will be back 1 week from today with a listener question episode on Monday, December 30th. Thanks so much for stopping by.